Hello, everyone, and
Good
welcome to this webinar on negotiating your salary after unemployment. I have a pleasure to have with me here Marcel Dévény. We will ask him in a moment to introduce himself. But first of all, we want to understand a bit more about our audience. So we would love to know from where you are connecting. I counted the number of connections that I have is from 448 different nationalities. So I am curious to see whether the people that are joining us are all from Switzerland and Germany, where Marcel and I live, or if we have people from a number of other countries that are here with us to discover a bit more about the topic of negotiating your salary after unemployment. So this is the first time that you're using StreamYard. Just be aware that there is a post box, and from over there you can post a comment from as you want. So okay, here we have the first people joining us, and we have people from Genova, from Dubai, from Switzerland, from Bangkok, Netherlands, Germany, Italy, Switzerland, Italy again. Okay, France, fantastic. Happy to see a nice variety of participants that are with us today. So I suggest we get started, and I will start by asking Marcel maybe to tell us a bit more about himself.
Yes, thank you, Giuseppe. I'm more than happy to do so. As you said, I live in Germany, in Munich, but I'm Dutch, as some of you will hear in my accent. I have 25 years of experience in primarily sales, but also a bit in marketing and general management in both B2C and B2B environments. I have also lived in Switzerland, like where you live right now, when I did my MBA at IMD in Lausanne. And I even had the pleasure to live in Unterregeri. I am a certified trainer for 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and in leadership. And I'm really, really passionate about helping people achieve their full potential.
Okay. Fantastic, Marcel. Thank you very much. Just what we are going to do is, I'm going to start by asking a few questions to Marcel, but of course, we are keen to get your question. So as we are going to get really the objective is to answer your own question, to help you to deal with the challenges that you have. So do not hesitate to use the comment box to ask your question. But let me start, because I was intrigued by one of your LinkedIn posts, because you wrote that for you, negotiating your salary while being unemployed is one of the toughest negotiation positions you can be in. Can you please elaborate on that?
Yes, more than happy to. So I think, Giuseppe, also with your experience, a negotiation is very often a stressful situation, even for the most experienced negotiations and for people who have prepared well. Many negotiators actually love that stress and excitement because they thrive on it. However, most negotiators also experience anxiety. Will we close the deal? How much do we need to pay? How much do we get for us? And often a lot depends on that. And when you experience that anxiety, it really has a detrimental effect on the negotiation results. Now, that is confirmed by a study that was done by Alison Wood Brooks. She is associate professor at Harvard Business Review. She wrote an article in Harvard Business Review, December 2015, that I can absolutely recommend for you to read. It's called Emotion and the Art of Negotiation. Her research shows that anxious negotiators make weaker first offers, are more likely to exit a negotiation early, and made deals that were 12% less financially attractive. I'll share with you later on an example where it's not 12%, but significantly more. So conclusion, an unpleasant emotions truly impact the negotiation results. The opposite is also convincingly true. When you have strong, what I call intrapersonal power, That is, no emotions that are blocking or even hijacking you. Secondly, you have a high level of confidence and resilience. Then you're very likely to achieve very good negotiation results. And I'll present that in a very convincing case later on. So to now directly answer your question, why negotiating salary whilst being unemployed is one of the toughest negotiation positions. Giuseppe, one, you negotiate for yourself. If I negotiate for Procter & Gamble or for Lego or for Doifol, and I'm not successful, I can say, the product is not good enough, the value for money, the service is not so good. It has nothing to do with me. But if I negotiate for my own job, or I'm selling my consulting time, and I then get a no, it's more likely that I take that personal because I feel I'm not good enough or I'm not worthy. Secondly, anxious feelings that we've just talked about stack up and have a triple negative effect on your intrapersonal power. Why? If you've lost your job, it might very well be because you've been fired. And I bet quite some of us have experienced that. I have experienced that. It crushes self-confidence and you increase anxiety. And most people don't process these stressful feelings before they then go out and contact headhunters or prospective employers. And that is not an easy step as well, because there's a lot of rejection going on there as well. That is on top of that already lower confidence. And the third, you then are in the last round and you start to negotiate. And you might say, phew, that's good news. I'm very happy. Well, I don't have a source of income. I am unemployed. Am I going to ask for this amount of money, but then have the risk that I don't get the job? Or am I going to ask for that and accept that, and then may hurt my ego and have challenges, financial situations? So that means that this mental and emotional readiness for emotions for negotiation is extremely important. It literally pays off. And this is what I base my negotiations model on. Giuseppe.
Okay, perfect, Marcel. Another of the comments that you wrote on LinkedIn, you talked about the four core competence negotiation model.
Yeah.
Can you introduce us to this four core competence negotiation model?
Yes. So I've identified these four cores. One is clarify your value proposition. And we'll talk about it step by step. The second one is develop your negotiation game plan. The third one is create interpersonal effectiveness. And the fourth one is prepare for intrapersonal power. Now, these scores are interrelated, especially the intrapersonal power is really impacting the other elements. That's why I'll go a bit more in depth on that part. Core one is clarify your value proposition. Here are elements like define your USP. So what makes you really stand out, be it in skills, experiences, personality, mindset. The second thing is to define your needs, wants, and also constraints regarding the job and the package. Do I focus on salary or total package? What am I willing and able to offer? How mobile am I right now or in the future? Am I willing to work early mornings or late evenings if I'm going to be involved in global projects? The third thing is identify the needs and wants and constraints of the other party who you negotiate with. Because that other party, do we call them counterpart or not? Because counter has something, let's say, arguably negative in there. HR will have an interest to stick to the guidelines and make sure they find someone who's meeting, let's say, their cultural expectations. The boss will have a personal interest that you come, that you're very excited, and that you come as soon as possible. And last but not least, to create clarity on where is the overlap and the difference between my wishes and needs and that of the company. Giuseppe.
Oh, well, okay, thank you very much. Now, I guess, you give us this teaser, explaining the first step of your competence model. How about the key elements for the step number 2? It was develop negotiation game plan, right?
Correct. So after you've defined your USP and your wants and needs and constraints, you need to define your BATNA. Most of us will know that is the best alternative to no agreement, or the minimum that you want to get. The second element is to really adopt a win-win approach, to make sure that not only I win, but to also make sure that my counterpart, the other party, there is a win in it for them as well. Another element is when I then convey what it is that I want, how do I help the other understand that I actually deserve what I'm requesting? Not just from my perspective, but that I also can see that from their perspective. And another element here is to negotiate multiple issues simultaneously and not serially. Example, you will be talking about salary, about fixed, about bonus, possibly about company car, holidays, training and development. And instead of closing one of the other, if you close and you start, for example, with fixed salary, and then you have an agreement on that and you say, thank you, that is agreed. You then go to fix, to variable, because you think, I want at least 20% variable. And then the company says, oh, we don't do variable. If you've already closed the fixed, it's more difficult to go back. So you would say something like, well, thank you very much for sharing. It's good to know your thoughts, dear company, on the fixed. Let's look into the other elements, how we can create the overall picture. Yeah. The second element is identifying and preparing for dealing with the objections. So what is an objection? I actually Googled it. It's an expression of disapproval or opposition. It's very important to realize that it doesn't mean that they disagree with you or they dislike you or they think you're not worth. It just means that they have a different point of view. So it's important to ask, to clarify why that is. Could it be that they just have different facts? And objections may be related to your USP, but maybe also on expectations, etc. Let me give you an example on the salary negotiation, Giuseppe, and to everyone. Let's say I'm asking in a negotiation for 100,000 euro fixed salary, and the company will say, we can't offer you that salary. Then it's important that I ask for that reason, because it could be that I think, am I not worth that with my background? So the reason could be we only planned for 75 to 85,000 euros. We really want to have you, and that's why we've upped it to 90,000, but we can't go higher than that. So, and the reason is because we haven't budgeted for more. So you then clarify, confirm in a leading way. So you say, so if I understand you correctly, you do see my value north of 90,000, 100,000, but you don't have the funds to pay this year out more than 90,000, correct? Yes. Okay, thank you. And then you would say, thank you for sharing that clearly. I appreciate that. You're not saying I appreciate and accept the 90,000. You say, okay, thank you for sharing your perspective. Could I please propose the following suggestion? For this year, we fixed the base salary at 90,000 due to your cash constraints. So I really make a step to the company. We increase the fixed salary as of January 1 next year, 200,000, and we make that part of the contract. And thirdly, we agree a variable pay of 10,000 euros, which is payable only next year when I achieve base level expectations for this year. So that way, I still get my value of 100,000 euros, and I found a way for the company to circumvent their cash challenges, just as an example. Giuseppe.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think, as we wait for a question from the audience, I would like to go forward, in this first step model so that it can give also to our audience a methodology about some of the key things to consider when you're negotiating your salary after unemployment. Step 3, what is step 3? Create interpersonal effectiveness.
Exactly. So that is between people, let's say between me and you, or between me and the person who I negotiate with. One element is building rapport. Yeah. So rapport is very much about building a harmonious understanding with another person or with a group. So how do you do that? It's very important to just be yourself. Playing someone else is very difficult. Be yourself. Show real, genuine interest. So maybe not the how are you doing and then keep on talking, but really asking questions with the intent to understand. See if there's common ground. When I started to negotiate with the chief buying officer of a very big client in Austria for a company I worked for, I had found out on LinkedIn that he and I share a common interest, which is, for example, Tony Robbins. So I asked him about it and shared some of my experiences, so that really get us in line with a couple of interesting perspectives. The second element is really about asking questions and listening, because in the end, you want them to buy you versus you needing to sell yourself. And the third element that I find very important, and it's a relatively new thing, is facial expressions. More than 50% of communication is nonverbal, and that causes an either positive or negative impression. And even if we don't use our mouth to talk, the 42 muscles in our face will continue to communicate very, very loudly. And not just the Italians do that. I'm not Italian, but I'm still communicating loudly. We all do. Yet, we train ourselves on speaking, on presenting. Some people even got trained on listening. But I'd say, Giuseppe, 99.9% of the people are not trained on reading and interpreting facial expressions. And non-trained people get it wrong in 50% of the time. Let me give you an example of the impact in negotiations. So I think most of you will have been in negotiations where the buyer or the prospective employer says he's unhappy with the proposal. That's not the price that I was expecting. I need a better price. When you look at the face, you may see a sign of surprise or even happiness, a little bit here, because the person had not expected such a good offer. What will you do? When you follow what you've heard with your ears, I'm not happy with the price, you're likely to lower your price to just get a deal, to lower your salary demands. Okay, I'll not take the company car then. If you follow the signs that you see, you will not need to lower your price, and that may create even a room to win in other areas. And that is the power of understanding facial expressions and interpersonal effectiveness. Giuseppe.
Okay, Mario, I think this interpersonal power is intriguing to me. I mean, why it is called intrapersonal power?
Okay.
And how does it work?
Okay, so the previous is called interpersonal, between people, and intrapersonal is within you. So it's about the power within you, the mental, the emotional, and the physical power that you feel and that you convey towards others. So why is this relevant? If you're weak in this intrapersonal power, which is always specific to the situation, I may feel very good about my relationship with my wife, but maybe in the situation of negotiating with a client or with my children, I may feel not as strong. If that is the case in job search and salary negotiation, because you're without a job and maybe money-wise you're being challenged, if you're low in that intrapersonal power, how will you define a USP that is really strong, unique, and that you feel fantastic about, that you burn for? How will you then convince others of the USP? And how will you convince others that you're worth a certain euro package? So within intrapersonal power, there's two key elements that we need to be dealt with. One is reducing dysfunctional emotions. Let's start briefly, a few words about emotions. There are no positive or negative emotions. All emotions are good because they have a function. They signal something. They signal a certain need. There are pleasant emotions like fun, joy, happiness, and unpleasant emotions like sadness, anger, and fear. We all love to experience those pleasant emotions. The unpleasant emotions we want to avoid. When we avoid the unpleasant feelings, unpleasant emotions, they stack up and steer our behavior. Another element that is really important, in every emotion, there's a functional and a dysfunctional part. For example, in fear, a functional part of fear is that I'll be preparing for this webinar really well. Yeah. The dysfunctional part is that if I would be so worried and so full of fear to look like an idiot, to be rejected, to be not good enough, that I forget what I want to say. So there is a functional and a dysfunctional part. The dysfunctional parts are steering behavior in a way that is unpredictable. You can notice that when people are completely over or underreacting in certain situations. I've experienced with colleagues who left the meeting room when the buyer of a company came up with outrageous claims on additional investments that he wanted to have. That, of course, has a detrimental effect on the relationship, on the process of negotiations and the results. And this is why it's critically important to reduce that impact of the dysfunctional emotions. And I'll give a very telling experience case in a few moments. The second element and last key element that I want to talk about on the intrapersonal power is strengthening the enabling resources. Here's a couple of resources that I believe are very important in negotiations. Self-confidence. Secondly, resilience, which is about the capacity to deal with a difficult, unexpected situation. Creativity and flexibility, and calm. Yeah. What you then do is that you identify situations and experiences where you have experienced, for example, self-confidence or calm that are related to the experience you have to deal with. Let me give you one example. If I am going to go to an interview, I then think back of an interview that I've had in the past that was very successful, made me very proud, bursting with confidence. And then I relive that, and then that gives me the resources to use in that negotiation as well. A second example could be in 2.5 weeks from now, I need to do and I want to pass that, a big test for a training that I'm going on. For me, using that interview experience of more than 20 years ago, actually, will not be very relevant. So I'll take an example of when I did my MBA at IMD, challenging business school. I passed all the tests really well. So then I think I was able to pass all the tests at IMD, then I will also be able, if I prepare really well, this test. So these are the two key elements of intrapersonal power.
Okay, Marcel, great. I mean, so now we have a 4-step methodology that can help you to reflect and prepare for in the best way whenever you're negotiating your salary. What is really important to us is really to answer your question. So, Marcel and I can continue to chat for a while, but we would love to hear about, some of the real life challenges at a practical level, at an emotional level, at whatever kind of element you want to talk, so that we can help you to reflect on those challenges. Let me also take a moment as we wait for some more questions to tell you about our forthcoming events, because if you're interested to continue to learn, if you're interested to join us, and if you're in procurement, you may be interested about my next LinkedIn Live. Is called Negotiating with Sales, taking place on the 3rd of June, always at 1 o'clock European time. We are going to ask a sales executive to tell us what are the good practice to negotiating with sales. So mainly interesting for procurement people, but of course, also for salespeople. I do have also a webinar on the 4th, so the day after, the 4th of June at 2:30 in the afternoon, and it's called Virtual Negotiation Toolbox. So if you want to strengthen your ability to negotiate virtually, then why not joining my webinar on the 4th of June at 2:30. Just to be clear, the first one is a free event, the other one is something there is a charge, but okay, that's just to be transparent with you. Okay, now, as we wait for some question from the audience, let me continue, because we had a chat as we talked about this event, and you talked about your coaching practice. And by the way, I want to give you great news. You will have the opportunity to get free coaching from Marcel or myself. So if you do have an important challenge that is coming in front of you, then Marcel is prepared to offer for free for 3 persons a full coaching program. Let's say which means 3 sessions of I don't know, 1 hour, 1 hour and a half each, so that people can maybe manage better their emotion, deal with anxiety, increase their self-confidence, etc., so that they're able to do it. If you need a quicker help, then I'll be giving 3 coaching sessions as well, but this will be shorter session. And so, you have the possibility to qualify for a free coaching session, either with Marcel or myself. So what we are going to do, we are going to put on the chat a quick survey that you can fill, and then based on the reply that we get, based on the story that you tell us about why you are the best candidate to get the free coaching, then we will announce on a LinkedIn post who are the winner of the coaching session with Marcel or with myself. With this in mind, let's start getting some of the questions. Let's take some of the questions. Is negotiating via virtual tools different versus face-to-face? How will you go about this? Now, Martins, the virtual negotiation toolbox workshop is on the 4th of June. Now we are talking about negotiating your salary. Now, having said that, if we are talking about negotiating your salary virtually, then inevitably it is easier to say no virtually than to say no face-to-face. So if you want to get better results, then you're better off going and meet the person you're negotiating with face-to-face. This will be a better option than doing remotely. By the way, let me give you another hint. I strongly suggest you to negotiate with the decision maker rather than negotiating with the HR person. And of course, with all the respect to the colleagues in HR which are listening to this webinar, and I have many friends in HR, the HR person has different priority. The HR person has to respect the rules, has to respect the salary band. There is a process. They want to care about, that the compensation are equal among the different people in the teams, etc., etc. So they will look at salary negotiation from a process perspective. Now, your boss, he or she is going to benefit directly from the work you do. They will understand fully the value add that you can bring and the other people cannot bring. They also want to have a good relationship with you as you start. So you're much more likely to get a concession from your boss or the boss of your boss as opposed to getting it from HR. We have plenty of questions coming, so let me move to the next one, and then, of course, we can elaborate some more on the topic. How much should you stick to your last reward package as a benchmark for your negotiation? Well, thank you, Isabella, for the great question. And I will say that we can look at 3 different types of situations. If your previous compensation is very high, and you're even going for a position which is lower, then you can mention it, and you can even mention a disclaimer. You can say, well, my current compensation is 230,000 euros because I have an expatriate package in Uzbekistan, and this has, of course, increased my compensation. I do understand that for a position in Barcelona, then my compensation will be different. So I'm sure we'll be able to find a solution. Now, if you have a good compensation, then again, it's a good idea to mention it. Where it gets tricky is where you have a weak compensation and you want to make a jump. That's, of course, it may be dangerous if you mention your current compensation in a context where you want to make a substantial increase of your compensation. And, for instance, I see in the audience, we have people from India, we have people from Bangkok, we have people from Indonesia. And if you want to get a job in Europe, well, probably what was a good compensation in Bangkok may not sound so impressive when you're applying for a job in Zurich or in London. Then in those kind of situations, probably referring to your compensation that then gets translated into pounds and into euro, into Swiss francs, is not going to sound very impressive. So what can you do in those situations? Well, you may say something like, well, my current compensation is Bangkok is in the top 5% among the managers at my company. You may say, my current compensation in Bangkok at equal purchasing power is equivalent to 85,000 euros in Paris. You can say, my current compensation in India enables me to have a nanny, a driver, and a cook. I know it may be difficult to get those things in Zurich, but I'm sure we'll be able to find a solution for a proper compensation package. Now, of course, depends how comfortable you feel with using humor, but what I'm saying is you can find a way to avoid question about the salary. You may even say, listen, I don't want to talk about my compensation in Italy, considering that the salary range are substantially higher in Switzerland. I'm sure we'll be able to find a solution together. Or another things that you can do, rather than talk, if the other interviewer really insists on a number, then you're better talk about your salary expectation than talk about your current salary. Then you may say something like, well, I don't think it makes much sense to talk about my current compensation, consider that it was in a different sector, in a different country, or whatever. Having said that, I want you to know I'm currently interviewing for position between 100 and 110,000 euros. And then you mention your salary expectation rather than mentioning the 60,000 that you're currently making today. Okay, let's check the next one. Let's listen to Alessandro. How do you deal with a current lower salary of a bridging job when asked what is your current salary during a job interview? While prior to the bridging job, you were earning 30% more. Well, Alessandro, a good advice for this is in recent years, my compensation has ranged between 250,000 and 230,000. Where 250,000 maybe is the bridging job that you were having at a lower level, and 300,000 was really the kind of compensation that you had beforehand. Then by presenting the information in this way, then you make reference to the higher number, and it makes people understand that a full package should be in the range of the 350,000, not in the range of the 250. Thank you. Let's move to the next question. Not sure the winner wants this publicized on LinkedIn. I will not want that. Puts in a weak position. Well, we do it for transparency, Nicole. We do it for transparency to announce the name of the people that are winners. Now, of course, we can write it also personally, but people that applied for the coaching session may want to have a visibility about who were the winners. So sorry about that. Let's look to Xavier. Thanks, Mr. Conti and Marcel. Once you've given a salary bands to interview ago and it is met, how to shift the conversation in order to reopen the salary discussion? Well, Xavier, you can reopen the salary discussion if you've made a legitimate mistake. For instance, you're applying for a job in Germany and you're currently working in France. You were not really clear about which was the salary compensation in Germany, in Finland, or in private equity, or something which is different versus what you are doing today. Then you can go back to the interviewer and say, listen, at the beginning of the process, you asked me for my salary expectations, and without knowledge of the market, I estimated this to be the right number. Now, having been approached by other company, having had the opportunity to look did more research on the market, I do realize that my number was on the low side. So I just want you to be aware that, considering the cost of living and those kind of things, then probably my right compensation in Zurich should be XY rather than being whatever you have mentioned before. Let's listen to Daniele. How to avoid to reply the question, what is your salary expectation, or what is your last package? And if this could impact the ongoing discussion. Well, let me give you a few ideas. You can say something like, as much as compensation is important, is only fourth among my priorities. I need to understand a bit more about career evolution, the company culture, the management style of my boss before I'm able to reply about this question. And I think, it is legitimate, right, to say that you need to understand a bit more about the job before you can talk about money. If your next job, Daniele, involves giving massage to Shakira, then probably you can be a bit flexible in terms of compensation. But if your job involves working 7 hours per day, 14 hours per week, then probably you will be less flexible in terms of compensation, because that's not quite, the kind of dream situation that you want to be faced on. Marcel, you wanted to add something, or no? I just thought. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Sorry, I thought you wanted to say. Let's move to the next one. So happy to join you, Professor Conti. What if we are unemployed and as a fresher to the economy situation? Is there a scope for salary negotiation in a bad economy where there are hardly any jobs for newcomers? Well, first of all, let me say that you want to reframe a bit your thinking. Of course, it's not an easy job. It's not an easy context. We know that the pandemic has put a number of industries in difficult situation, but there are also industry which are doing well. So let's recognize it that, maybe, if you want to have a job in the oil industry, maybe it's not exactly the best situation. But if you want a job in technology, well, there are a number of situations which are actually going in a much better situation. I will even say this, that the pandemic has opened up more jobs globally. There are companies that are now much more open to having a location-free job. So you can continue to be in your home country and apply for jobs in New York, in London, in Tokyo, whatever, and then still continue to manage it remotely. Now, of course, there are more opportunities. There is also more competition. So that's not an easy thing. I think, one of the best advice I can give you is probably make more application than the one that you will do in the current situation. Because, there are indeed the companies that have a hiring freeze. There are companies that have tight budgets. And so, by applying to more companies, you may be able to identify more opportunities that may be relevant for you.
Giuseppe, maybe here a perspective as well is, especially in this situation, defining your USP, what makes you stand out, on skills, on experience, but also who you are as a person is incredibly important. And if you're able to convey that in a very clear way, they truly feel that you maybe tick all the boxes and you present a lot of value to the company. If you're fired up, if you're excited, they'll say, we'll give it to that person. Yeah.
Absolutely. Differentiation is key. If at the end the company wants to, if you are a good candidate, the room for negotiation is such. If you are the candidate, the room the negotiation increase. If they really want you and nobody else, then no matter what is the economic situation, then they will look for solution in order to hire you. Okay, I do understand, but some company consider key to know your current salary. Galileo, I think you touch an important point. Indeed, in Italy, it is pretty much an expectation that you give your salary. There is also a cultural component. Like in the UK, much more relaxed. In fact, sometimes the put the money already in the job ad. In the job ad already tells how much money this position pay. In Italy, there is a culture that if you don't tell your salary expectation, your past salary, they're not gonna let you out of the door. So they have a form to fill, and they want to put a number into that form. Now, what can you do in those kind of situations when the other company expects you to give a number? Now, regarding the salary expectation, maybe you can give a range which is quite wide. I'm looking for a compensation between 100 and 200,000 euros. Can you be a bit more specific? That's very vague. He says, well, for the time being, I don't know much about responsibility, career opportunities, opportunity for development, management style, etc., etc. Once I will know more, I will be able to narrow down the range. When asked about your current compensation, then of course, if you had a previous job that paid more, use the trick that we mentioned before and talk about in recent years, this was my compensation. And what I will also encourage you to do, of course, whenever you talk about the compensation, consider about all the things that the company gave you that had a monetary value. You had hot meals at lunch every day. Okay, that's some value. You had a company car, you had insurance, you had other kind of things. Then, of course, do make sure that you really consider all the elements that were in the package, because it may not be the case that the new company was going to offer the same kind of elements. Thank you. Okay, I think we covered the question that we have on the pipeline. Now, I take the opportunity, and of course, you can continue to ask questions, but I take the opportunity to go back to Marcel, since we have the pleasure to have Marcel, and since we have now, I think what we should do is give you the link to sign up for our coaching session. So if you're interested to have the coaching session with Marcel or myself, then fill the survey monkey that you're going to find on the chat, because out of all the people that reply, we will choose the best one, the thing that can benefit the most from our coaching, and then we will announce the winner on LinkedIn. Now, Marcel, can you give some concrete example, maybe from your coaching practice, on I think out of all the elements, maybe the intrapersonal power, the last one you mentioned, is important. So how do you boost positive emotions?
That's good.
What did you do?
So the example I'd like to share with everyone is a negotiation of an exit package that is on the other side of the coin of negotiating a salary. And the client in this case is someone who I know really well. She's my wife. And my wife was told to leave in a restructuring that the company was going through. She was offered for Germany, quite standard package consisting of a certain amount of months, not a multiple of months per year that she'd worked, a few months of garden leave, a job search support package. And if she would agree a package within a week, she would get an additional few €1,000. Why? Because they wanted to conclude it in the fiscal year. When my wife came home, she then told me, and tears were running. I let her talk and I let her share to get the first part of the emotions out of the system. To be clear, it was only her second employer. She'd spent 80% of her career there, close to 20 years. It was like a second home in a way. We were also for another reason under time pressure, because we were due to fly to the US 2.5 days later for a week-long personal development program, which was also expensive. And she wanted to get the, excuse my French, shit out of her system related to the announcement that she would leave and the negotiation. And she wasn't free at all. Now, the rational part of her realized there's no other jobs at her level that are interesting for her. And her constraint was she's not geographically mobile. So there were several emotions, although her brain understood that there were emotions blocking her. There was shock and panic. There was deep sadness, because from one day to the other, she would no longer be part of the group with the colleagues. There was no fear to be rejected. She felt rejected. And there was big anger as well. So we worked on all 4 cores of the negotiation, not just the emotions, because that's not good enough. You won't get there. That's just one wheel on the car. You need 4 to drive. So we worked on eliminating these dysfunctional emotions, installed the resources she needed, and then we worked on the first 2 parts. Clarify her value proposition, developing the negotiation game plan. The next day, my wife negotiated with her VP, and at the end of the day, she had an agreement. It was above her BATNA. It was above what she had aimed for. It was 50% more than the original offer. And as she's not, with all due respect, the cleaning lady at that company, we're talking significant money. That would not have happened if she would not have been able to really digest the situation and therefore have more capacity in her mind and in her emotions to really come up with a good negotiation game plan. And that is the real life impact of this interpersonal power and the potential of these 4 cores of negotiation. Now, does it mean that therefore in any salary negotiation, I'll get you to 50% more? That's not a guarantee. But if you feel not strong and not free because you're without a job and you have other fears and anxieties and you can't tap into those resources, you can't also convey with conviction your message. So that is one very concrete example, Giuseppe, that I wanted to share with you and the audience.
Yeah, thank you for sharing also a very personal story. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and maybe back to someone said, I think it was Nicole who said, it would be very public and that would be, I'm not sure if she said embarrassing. I see your point. With a bit of my more gray hair, I'd say a paradigm, is that a weakness or is it a threat? Yeah, is it a weakness or is it a strength? I feel it's a strength to work on myself and how I feel. If a Cristiano Ronaldo or a Lionel Messi every day get all kinds of specific training, including mental training, why not us as managers in companies or people who have their own company? Giuseppe.
Right. Let's move to the next question. How long time of an occupation should we wait until we take into consideration a role decrease for getting a new job? A salary decrease or a role decrease? Now, Mariano, this is a very personal question. It depends from so many factors. How do you see the job market? What kind of skills you have? What is your financial situation? You have 6 children waiting at home, or you are a single and you have lots of wealth stuck in the bank account. So in that respect, I'm not able to give you an advice. What I would suggest you to do is, identify the different factors, make a realistic assessment on the market, maybe get the perspective from others, right? Because if we are carried out by emotion, like Marcel was saying, maybe we may not have the most objective reading of the situation. So getting some external help, maybe if you're lucky, maybe you also get the coaching session, then, this may help you, to understand a bit more about what you should consider. And also, another element to be considered is how much of what you're doing is impacted by digital transformation and the recent change. You used to have a high paid job which is now becoming obsolete, or your skills are still very sellable? Do you have geographical mobility or not, etc.? So, just reflect on those things to make a better assessment and get maybe some advice from somebody else. Very impactful sharing of your wife's personal experience, Marcel. Thank you, Gerben. Perfect. Let's move. Can we fill the survey on behalf of a friend who can access the survey? Yes, well, of course, yes, you can fill. Just put their name and their email address. But of course, I think the criteria that we will use to make our decision is the story that you're going to share, right? Why you think you are the best person to benefit from the coaching program for Marcel or the coaching session from me. So in that respect, as long the person that knows the story is probably best positioned, to write the story. Okay, let's go to another question from Galileo. In my experience, the negotiation is very important, but most of the time the negotiation is not possible. Basically, take it or leave it. Well, it may well be the case, Galileo. Again, there are cultural elements that come into place, but it also depends about the balance of power. If your skills are average, if there are plenty of people that have the same skills, if you're convinced that, there is nothing specific and unique that you can bring, then of course, you ended up being in a situation, take it or leave it, you're probably going to take it. Now, if we follow the example, step number 1 from Marcel, and we have developed a strong USP, and we were able to differentiate ourselves very well during the interview process, then they are really going to be interested in Galileo, and they want to make an extra effort in order to make sure that they recruit you. Now, we know that the dynamics may be different, whether you're dealing with a multinational company, with a family-owned, and et cetera, et cetera. So I don't want to make state-owned, governmental organization, etc. The room for negotiation is not the same for everyone, but I just want you to reconsider a bit the paradigm. Maybe, there are more opportunities than you think. It seems that there are more men than women in this audience. Is that correct? If so, how will you comment this? Well, that's it looks indeed that there are more men speaking. Now, I don't see the whole audience, so I don't know whether in the whole audience there are more men or for women. Now, one of the things that we know from studies on influencing is that usually women tend to wait to ask questions, right? The men are more likely to go forward and to express immediately their ideas, while the women are more likely to be cautious, to think it over, to reflect, and then, that's the kind of problem that happens also in business meeting, right? A woman has a great idea. She says, well, let me think it over. Let me reflect a bit more. Let's see if I can formulate it in a more effective way. And the minutes pass by. In the meantime, there is a mic that comes and says, well, we should do this. Okay. And the idea was expressed by Mike, and it's too late. So it may well be that's the reason. I don't know really what is the split between men and women in the room. Okay, let's thank you for sharing live example. Bring experience into context makes it more tangible. Here we have a woman making a comment. Well done. By the way, you also have coming up, the link to the virtual negotiation toolbox webinar that I'm running on the 4th of June. The next LinkedIn event on the 3rd of June about negotiating with sales. And we still have time for one last question. Maybe, why don't I ask it to Marcel a question, can you share some tips on how can people work on their interpersonal power? Not everybody will win the coaching session with you. If the people in the audience want to work on their interpersonal power, what could they do?
Okay, well, to start with, the people who don't win, I'm still more than happy to support them as well. So that is one thing. But a couple of tips that people can work on themselves. So there is this cycle called something happens, an event. There's a meaning you attach to the event that triggers a feeling that drives your action and then the result. If you change the meaning, you would change your feelings and your actions. I'll give you an example. When the HR person will say in the salary negotiation, well, we can't offer you more salary, the meaning you can either attach to it, okay, I'm not worth it, I'm off here, I don't like it anyway, or you can be, the meaning attached to it, maybe they don't have the salary, maybe it's not in the salary range that I can that they're able to pay at the moment, and then the result of that is will be more, okay, let me ask a question to understand. So that is one thing. It's about how you perceive the situation. The second area is related to expressing and dealing with let's say the emotions related to that. So one thing is you can discuss it with a friend, yeah, support a friend or a family member. However, people may be fine to ask for support if the car doesn't work or the laptop doesn't work, but to talk about emotional challenges, most people don't do. To be honest, I'm crap at that. A good friend of mine says, Marcel, as soon as I hear less from you, I know you're not doing well. Maybe that is a male thing, I don't know, but that is how what helps me. Another tip is then keeping a journal. Yeah, so I then just write about it. I don't really read what I write, I just let the flow of thoughts go. And a very well-known last tip I want to share with you, easier said than done, at least in my experience, is mindfulness meditation, where it's really about recognizing and feeling the feelings without judging that. Yes, that works well, but you need discipline and practice. And to be honest, Giuseppe, I've done these things myself, and they've helped me. Period. At the same time, I've been in situations myself where I felt I need more support, so I went to see a coach to get that support to deal with situations. And then I decided I want to do more of that myself, help people succeed in the same way. Like in this case, I was able to support my wife in getting a significant better package. Is that important? Yeah, the importance is not just in the financials, but also feeling good about yourself then. Yeah, what you got out of that. So those are a couple of tips that I can share with people. And I'm more than happy to support people who contact either in the survey or in a personal message.
Fantastic. Marcel, thank you very much for sharing your methodology and your real life success story with your coaching practice, helping people succeed. Thank you very much to our audience that has been with us, asking a number of interesting questions. I remember you have the opportunity to get free coaching session with both Marcel and myself. So you have the survey in the chat. Let us know why you should be the winner. And next week, we will be communicating the name of the winner of the coaching session. And hopefully we will continue the learning journey together. So thank you again, and look forward to reconnect with you next week. LinkedIn Live, negotiating with sales on the 3rd of June at 1 o'clock, and webinar on virtual negotiation toolbox on the 4th of June at 2:30 p.m. Central European time. All the very best, and
thank you very much.
Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.